Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 3 and our final week with you all of Black History Month. This week, we are going to be talking about injustices in sports, and more importantly, we are going to be celebrating wonderful activists and athletes that have influenced the sports world into what we know and love today. Racial justice has been a part of American athletics since at least 1883, when Moses Fleetwood Walker of the Toledo Blue Stockings played against the Chicago White Sox, whose owner threatened not to play his team against a black person. Walker also became the first black player to play in major leagues before black people were barred from playing in 1887. It would take another 60 years until Jackie Robinson was the next black player in a Major League Baseball game. Nowadays, we see activism in many different ways. Just 4 years ago, it was Colin Kaepernick who bravely took a knee to protest police brutality, ending with him no longer being an NFL player. Just 1 week after George Floyd's murder, black soccer players in the English Premier League and their allies were protesting for black lives. Over the summer, the Women's National Basketball Association spearheaded education, protests, and fundraisers to address racial injustices, with the NBA following their lead. Only 7 months ago, on July 30th, after the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless others, the New Orleans Pelicans and the Utah Jazz were the first 2 NBA teams to kneel during the national anthem, with many other teams from all different leagues following along after them. Black athletes like Naomi Osaka in tennis, Bubba Wallace in NASCAR, Alex Okafor in the NFL, Matt Dumba in the NHL, and hundreds of other athletes around the world took a stand with their allies against the continued pain of racial injustice.
In 1936, Louise Stokes and Tidia Pickett became the first African-American women to represent the United States in the Olympics in Berlin for track and field. Later, in 1948, Alice Coachman was the first African-American woman to win an Olympic gold medal and set records with her high jump. Ora Washington won her first American Tennis Association singles title in 1929 and held this title for the next 7 years. Lynette Woodard became the first African-American woman to join the famous Harlem Globetrotters basketball team. Around the same time, Cheryl Miller led the U.S. team to a gold medal in the 1984 Olympics. In 1986, Debbie Thomas became the first black woman to win the U.S. figure skating singles championship, and she was also the world championship that year. Today, in the 21st century, we see excellence by Venus and Serena Williams in tennis, and Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles in gymnastics.
On February 13, 1920, exactly 101 years ago, Hall of Famer Rube Foster created the Negro National League. In the 1860s, black and white players from around the country played the game together. After the Civil War, the emergence of Jim Crow laws and segregation led to the exclusion of black players from big league play. For nearly 60 years, black players barnstormed the country and continued to play the game however they could. By 1920, the Negro National League was formed with black owners and for black players. Hall of Famers like Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, Martin DeHigo, Bill Foster, Judy Johnson, Satchel Paige, and Turkey Stearns found great success in this early league. Over time, rival leagues like the Southern Negro League and Eastern Colored League developed and would compete against the NNL teams in an annual Negro League World Series. The Great Depression brought an end to the original Negro Leagues in the early 30s, but the emergence of the Negro American League in 1937 brought about a resurgence of the game for its players and fans. Teams like the Kansas City Monarchs, Homestead Grays, Indianapolis Clowns, and Pittsburgh Crawfords would often get more fans in attendance than their major league counterparts. The Negro Leagues represented Black America with a unique style of play, passionate fan base, and extraordinary talent. People from all over the country would flock to watch many of the world's best players play the game at the highest level while supporting these successful black-owned businesses. These leagues thrived until Jackie Robinson joined the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. Though the leagues faded away in the 50s and 60s as more black players joined the majors, the Negro Leagues brought new players, new fans, and hope for equality to America's greatest pastime.
Let's talk wealth inequality. It's interesting because when we look at professional sports, especially leagues like the NBA and the NFL, the majority of athletes are black. On TV, we see LeBron James with $500 million to his name. But as we see overrepresentation of black Americans in pro sports, we rarely grasp the reality of the severe racial wealth gap. Pro athletes and stars are a tiny fraction of the black population. According to the Census Bureau, the median black family has 1/10 the wealth of a median white one. 1 in 5 black Americans live below the poverty line, or 20% compared to 8% of white families. The average per capita income of black Americans is $24,000 a year, almost half of white Americans at $42K. The barriers to black economic inequality have endured since the Emancipation Proclamation. They've evolved over time from slavery and Jim Crow, but have continued to be the result of structural discrimination in American society, like high rent rates, redlining, mass incarceration, access to education, etc. Simply put, racism in the American system has made it so that black Americans have fewer opportunities for upward mobility and less economic security in savings and assets. This inequality, more than anything else, is the heart of the oppression that black Americans face. And it is so important to keep in mind right now, as black people are suffering greatly through the pandemic because of it. There are many paths to crossing this wealth inequality gap, many that are currently being worked on. They will be a part of a less economically disparate future for every American, but certainly there must be efforts that focus on lifting up black communities. What can you do? Raise awareness and advocate.
Black athletes throughout American history have been discriminated against by their dominant white counterparts. Whether fighting for equal pay, speaking up against racial issues, or harassment on the fields, these athletes have been silenced to not speak up about discrimination or injustices. Black athletes are fearful if they do speak up, is their job or position in jeopardy, as they do not have the same privilege and protections white athletes have. In 1968, black athletes demonstrated at the Mexico City Games against racial discrimination they were continuing to face. 2 members of this movement, Tommie Smith and John Carlos, were both kicked off the U.S. Olympic team for demonstrating their solidarity to the movement by clenching their fists and holding them in the air during the national anthem. They were polarized by much of white America after this. Situations like Tommie Smith and John Carlos have been happening ever since. A much more modern example of this is Colin Kaepernick, former NFL quarterback, was also ostracized for taking action against racism. We see countless black athletes taking a stance against racism and discrimination in and on the fields or courts, but as soon as they do, they are outcasted and some even fired. This needs to change. Black athletes standing up for themselves and their black teammates shouldn't be cause for firing or being ostracized. It's not political, it's not violent, it's human rights.